In this episode, I'm going to cover the infinite list view. I'll start by creating a material app from scratch. I'll create a home page. Then from there, I'll navigate to the list view. I'll reference a state object, and then I'll navigate to the items page. So to get started, I'll go to IntelliJ IDEA. I'll create a new project. I'll select Flutter. I've already put in the Flutter SDK path. I'll select Next. And in this case, I'll name my ListView application. I'll create Finish. Once the application is generated, I'll start the iOS simulator. After the iOS simulator is up and running, I'm going to minimize or make the left window smaller and the bottom window smaller. This will give me more room to play with. So after that, I'm going to erase the sample contents. Now that I've erased the contents, I'm going to start my application building. So the first thing I need to do is I'm going to create a comment to tell you part of the story, and this will be my root widget, and it will be a material app. So what I want to do is use a live template, and by typing in ST, it brings up the list of options. And in this case, I want to use the new stateful widget. I created a stateful page live template in one of the previous episodes, and I won't be using it this time, but I want to use a stateful widget. And I'm going to name it my app. And in this root, it will be a material app. So I'm going to go new material app. And this will only be occurring in the root widget. So I'm going to give it a title, and that title will be my app. It's something arbitrary to start with, and I want to give it a theme, and for this theme I'll provide a private variable. So let's say theme data, and at the top I'm going to instantiate that theme data. So I'll say final theme data. By the way, if I say final, I have to specify the type of, and that will be private variable theme data equals new theme data. And I'll give it one variable to start with. Primary color is, or I guess this would be an argument because it's going into the constructor. So that would be, let's say colors and blue. I won't cover the details of theme data right now. I'll come back in a future episode and cover this in more detail. But anyways, I'm specifying the theme for my material app, and it's going to be the default theme. The next step is, let's say I want to give it the home page. So I'm going to say new home page. And for all my routes, I'm going to say page, or I'll put page on it. And I'll put a comma as a trailing because I'll come back and add more attributes. So that default route, let's say place, I'm going to put a comment here to say what I'm doing. And that will be, the default route will be root. And I'm going to use a stateful live template to create that route, new home page. And there we go. So the type doesn't have an error anymore because I've created it. So for my home page, I'm going to use the scaffolding to create, so new scaffold. And it takes 2 arguments to complete it. And a scaffolding will say my app bar at the top will have a title, and the content will be the body. So app bar, the argument will be new app bar, and I'll give it a title of text, new text, and that text will be my home page. And I'll comma, and I'll do the body, and I'll do a raised button. I'll show you why in a moment. Raised button, and it auto completes with the on pressed. And I'm going to delegate to a method. It says on pressed, and I'll hit Alt Enter to complete that. And there we go, on pressed. What do I want to do on pressed? I'll leave it to do because I'm going to navigate to my to-dos. Navigate, I should say navigate instead of to do. And I've got to complete the raised button, so I'll nest these arguments. The nesting is nice because you can see the pattern of the tree of widgets. So I'll say child, new text, and I'll say my to-dos, comma, and hit, I'm going to format this by right-clicking on main and reformat code. And the keyboard shortcut is Alt-Command-L for the the Macintosh. So what I want to do is I'll use the keyboard shortcut in the future, but I just wanted to show how to get there. So now that the code is formatted, let's run the app for the first time by hitting the debug icon. It takes a moment longer to process the first launch. After the first launch, it'll be a hot reload and it's very fast. So let me give some more room while it launches. Excellent. So my application has loaded and there's my to-dos. So I can click on it, but nothing happens yet. So what I want to do is navigate to the to-dos page, and I got to create that page next. So I'm going to use the live template, STFUL, and create a new to-dos page. There's the page again. That's going to stand for one of my routes. And let's just comment that and say place is of to-dos, just for quick reference. So what do I want to do for this page? I'm going to add a new text just to show me it's working. This is my to-dos. No, let's go back and instead of text, let's do new scaffold. And I'm going to terminate and then nest again. App bar is going to be new app bar. And for the title, let's say new text. These are my to-dos, and comma, and the body will be, let's say, new text, something simple to say to-dos. What I will come back to do is adding a list view here with a refresh indicator, and I'll show how to do that in a moment. But I got to finish wiring up to-dos because it needs one more thing. Well, I have to tell my material app it's part of the routes. So how do I do that? I go up to the material app, and in this case, I'm going to say routes now has a route. So I'll say, so I'm going to hit Alt Enter on it, and I'm going to create a local variable routes. It hoists it up before the new or return. And this is going to be, whoops, got to hit complete equals, and this is going to be string, comma, widget builder. And you're probably asking, how do I know what that type is, or what this is? A map with a string and the value is a widget builder. And if I command click on routes, I can see it wants a map of string and widget builder. And what is a widget builder? It is a function that I've got to create. So in this map, I'm going to say for the key, this is going to be to-dos, and the value will be a function, and that function will provide a build context as the parameter argument, and the expression will be, or the body will instantiate my to-dos page. So then, whoops, I got to add a comma there because I could add another page, comma. So when I call to-dos, when the navigator calls to-dos, it will instantiate my to-dos page. So let's go back to to-dos page because I want to finish this. It looks like I'm ready to go, so let me test that to make sure it's all wired up properly. So when I click on the button, it should navigate to my to-dos page. So click, click. Oh, I forgot to navigate to it. So I'm going to call navigator of the page context. I'm going to go push named because I want to call to-dos, which I just created up and registered and the routes from a material app. So I hit hot reload, and I'm going to click on my to-dos, and there we go, routed to my to-dos with the scaffolding app bar, my to-dos, and the body of to-dos. So now what I want to do in this, I want to add a list view, but when I pull down on the list view, I want to have that refresh indicator, the cool little refresh indicator. It's nifty. So how do I do that? So I need to replace the text. In this case, I want to say new refresh indicator, and it gives me a couple arguments for auto completion. And the first one, let's nest these first, auto format them with my manual formatting, I should say. Add a comma there. So the first one I want to do is I'm just going to delegate on refresh to another method because I'll just, instead of nesting it, so on refresh. Okay, so I'm going to hit Alt Enter, and I'm going to create a method, and it is a future, and I'm going to return a null because I know it's a return null because I looked at on refresh and return. And in this case, I'm going to use a completer, and it's going to return a future, and I'll show that. And I'll go backwards here. Completer, and that is going to be of null. And completer, I'm going to name it completer. A equals new completer. And this is of null type. And what I want to do is, whoops, I gotta correct the variable spelling. So what I want to do is simulate an HTTP request and delay a few seconds just to show that the refresh indicator stays down for a moment. So I'm going to say new timer equals new timer. Let's say autocomplete there. Duration, new duration, and I'll say seconds is 3. And the callback, I want to call and complete the completer. So the way I do that, it's going to be an anonymous function there. And the body, I'll say completer, complete. And there's nothing to complete. So, oh, I got to terminate. So there we go. Take away the spaces for now. So let's, oh, I can't run it yet because I need to do the list view. So the child of this refresh indicator will be a list view. So new list view, and I'm going to use the built named constructor builder. Let's see, we'll builder autocomplete, and there's an item builder. So I'm going to delegate to a function or a method, and I'll say item builder. So this will be my item builder method. So I'll hit escape to get out of that and hit alt enter, and I'll create a method item builder which will create a widget, and I'll hit enter to autocomplete the auto completion of that creation of that method. So I need to return a widget, so I'm going to name my widget new to-do item widget, and I'm going to give it the to-do. So I need to create a to-do because I'm going to simulate creating to-dos, and let's work through that. So let's say to-do is going to be a to-do. So I'm going to work this backwards. So I need to create a to-do. So let's say to-do is created by a method get to-do, and I'll say index. I'll provide the index as the parameter of that method. So I need to make a to-do. So in this case, I'm going to create another library of models just to show how to create a library. And this library I'll name models. It'll be a Dart file. And I'm going to say class to-do. And this to-do, I'm going to give it 2 properties. The first property I'll call Boolean finished. And then I'll say string name. And I'll give it a constructor. Constructor, I'll pipe in a couple parameters. It says this finished. It'll finished, and this dot named name. So it'll feed these values to the class or object. So main, so I can hit alt enter and import that library, and then when I import it, it goes up to the import. It says I'm going to import models and finishes that type, or that type is now on the class path. But now I'm going to hit alt enter to create the function or method. The method is inside the class, the function is outside. Return new to do, just create a to do here, and I'll say false for finish, and then, or yeah, false for finished, and the name will be to do, and then I'll say index. Okay, so that's just gonna give me a quick to-do. So I need to create the to-dos item widget. So this widget is going to be a stateful widget in this case. I'll just name everything stateful for now. I'm not going to designate stateless or stateful in this tutorial. So this is going to be to-do item widget. Hit enter. I got to add a constructor, and in this constructor I'm going to do optional arguments. So let's say to-do item widget, and it has to have a key, so I'm going to do brackets for optional key, and then comma this to-do, and I need to forward on the key or pass it to the super class, and so that's super, and I'm going to provide the key to the super. And so this I'm going to name as a state object, and that's going to be to-do. And when I call final, it has to have the defined type, can't be var. And this to-do, so this is an optional argument that passes to to-do. and I pass the key to the superclass. This is a state object that's defined. The state object is defined in how the stateful widget works. So I won't cover all those details. You can read more about it in the comments if you command click on the stateful widget. And there's lots of great docs, and right here it talks about the state objects. So I'm going to show how to reference a state object next. So now that I've created a ToDo item widget, what do I want to do? And then instead of a new container, I'm going to use a list tile. So new list tile, and I'll show how to reference that object in here shortly. So I'm going to nest these. So I'm going to give it a leading, and that leading will be a new text. This leading will be on the left. So then the text will be just a hyphen, something arbitrary. Show how it works. So the title will be a new text. And in this case, I want to say widget.todo.name. So basically I have a hyphen to do for every widget. Whoop, I need a comma instead of a line termination. So it looks like I've created my item widget. So in the list view, it'll call the item builder when it needs a widget created, and that item will get a to-do and pass it to the to-do item widget, which has an optional argument of to-do, and this is a state object, which I reference if I command click by saying widget.todo. I can say widget will reference the state object, and I can command click to go to it as well. And I'm going to print out or get the name and provide that to the text argument, and it will print. So let's see how that looks. So I'm going to hit the hot reload. Once I'm there, I'm going to click on my to-dos, and there we go. There's my infinite list view with all my items getting built as I scroll. So I can pull down and see the refresh indicator, and it will go on for 3 seconds and then go away because it completed. So what I want to do next is click on a to-do and go to that to-dos page. So how do I do that? Let's see. So on the list tile, let's say when I tap on that, on tap, I'm going to delegate to a method on tap, something generic, and then I'll enter and create a method inside the class. What I want to do is navigate to a to-do. So I need to create that page. How do I do that? I'm going to use some comments to tell me what I'm going to do first. So this place will be of to-dos, and that will be a to-do this time. And so I'm going to use this live template to create a stateful widget, and I will say this is my to-do page. I will land. Well, I need to provide a to-do, so I'm going to copy the same process up here and add that constructor, and I'm going to replace the name, and this is, I got to add the final variable to-do. So I'm going to pass this to-do to the to-do, and what do I want to do? Something simple here, so I'll say new column, and that column will be, let's terminate that, nest it. So this will be, column will take children, and I'll say private member or private variable children. And what I want to do is alt enter and create a local variable, and I'll just hoist it up here because this is going to be, whoops, I gotta hit enter equals, this will be a typed list of widgets, and this list will be, the first widget will be new text, and I'll say for it will say finished, and I'll give it the finished. So I need a reference to do. This will reference the state object by saying widget dot to do dot finished. I'll say toString in this case, something simple to show me how it works, comma, and then the next item, the next child will be new text, and this will be the name, and I'll say the widget dot to do dot name, and it will call the state object. Oop, I can't terminate there. Okay, so I could add more children. In this case, I'll just have a couple to show that the page works. So how do I navigate to this? I'm going to use a different way to navigate here. I'm going to say navigator.of the page context, And I'm going to go push. I'm going to push a route this time. So how do I do that? So I'm going to hit Alt-Enter to create the local variable route, which gives me the type. So new material page route, and it's going to use a builder. And in this case, how does it use a builder? There's one, before I get to the builder, I'm going to add the settings and just say new route settings, route settings, and I'm going to give it the name of to-dos to-do. I'm going to hit auto formatting here, and okay, the builder. So how does a builder work? So that's the same way. Look up here. So it's the same function here. So I'm going to copy that build context and with expressions. So, and it's going to instantiate a to-do page, new to-do, new to-do. Whoops, I need to add a comma up here. I see that's creating havoc. New to-do page, and I gotta feed it the to-do, pass the to-do to the to-do page. Oh, I gotta reference the state object, so I'm gonna say widget.todo. So widget.todo will be passed to the new to-do page. So on tap, we'll create a new material route, and this route will be to-dos to-do, and it will create a new to-dos page with that to-do. Now, there are some things that I'm not covering in this episode, and that will be the global key of a stateful object. Now, I'm going to cover that in a future episode. I think that was too much to cover in one episode, and how that impacts the application development. So I am done. I'm going to hit hot reload. I should be able to tap on a to-do, my to-dos. I'm going to click on to-do 1. Whoop, finished, false, name to-do 1. You know what? I didn't add scaffolding to this page. So let's do that. So this to-do page, I just basically gave it a column. So I'm going to copy that. I'm going to go new scaffolding. In this case, you can see it doesn't have a theme yet, and the scaffolding will be app bar, new app bar, and this will have a title, and this will be a new text, my to-do, and the body will be of a column. So I'll add that column back, add a comma, and then hit hot reload, my to-dos. Click on to-do 3, and there we go. False and do my to-do. You can see how pretty it looks without a theme. So I'm going to click on 3 to show it passes to-do 3. And that's pretty slick. So I'm going to hit the refresh indicator. I could simulate the HTTP request, and once I'm done with that, I can refresh the list of to-dos. So that concludes basically what I wanted to aim for in this tutorial or this episode. So let me review what I just did. So at the root widget in the main method, I instantiate my material app. So I'm going to click on my app. That creates an application, a material app, and with the title of my app. And then I provide the theme data. And I didn't really cover theme in this application, but I could change the colors and what of the overall theme. And this, I'll cover this in more detail in the next or future episode. Keep your eyes peeled. And I instantiate my home page to say that's with the default route of this place route. And then I provide the routes, which I gave it only one extra route, and that says to-dos. When this is called this named route, it will create my new widget using a widget builder to-dos page. So moving along, the home page just has a button, and when that button is pressed, I'm going to add a trailing comma there, and I'm going to go to this on pressed. It uses the navigator of this context, and it pushes a named route, and it will move forward to the to-dos. It calls to-dos, instantiates my to-dos page, and that to-dos page doesn't have any state objects. In this case, it just creates a page, and then it uses a refresh indicator as the root widget. And then in this root widget, I have an infinite list, and it creates or uses the item builder to create each item in that list. So it also calls on refresh and simulates an HTTP request. Well, I say it simulates. It could could be anything here. The business logic could be different, but I just basically added a timer. This is like the timer in the gallery, if you look at the Flutter gallery. And when that feature completes, it says, it just says to the list view or the refresh indicator, put that refresh indicator away. So the builder builds an item builder. Let's look at the item builder. I just delegate to a method which creates the widget for each item. And basically I said, okay, I made my models library and I created a simple class that says to do. And then in that I imported with Alt Enter, and here's the library import at the top. And that says, now the models are on my class path. I can use that model. Where was I? Here's the to do. And I say, okay, here's my method that gets the to do. And I pass the index to put in the name. And there we go. So that creates my items in that list. Over here, you can see if I just keep scrolling down, it keeps creating the to-do items. Pretty cool. So I can scroll back up and I can use the refresh indicator. So then when I click on a to-do, I go to the to-do page, which I used the material app because it was a little bit more dynamic in this case. So I created the route dynamically and I said, here's my route settings for that, to-dos to do, and it instantiates, uses the widget builder to create a new to-do page. And then I reference the state object by saying widget dot and the state object's name. And then I pass that along to the to-do page, and it has an optional arguments. By default, here's the key, but this is what I'm after, is the to do. So I set that state object in this page. And in this page, I use a simple column in the scaffolding, and it just says finished and name. So that's my basic app with an infinite list view, and I show how to reference the state objects. Thanks for watching today. Follow me for more tips and tricks on Flutter, and I'll catch you later.